Welcome to the Podcasting Podcast, where I am podcasting about podcasting. This is episode 3. The last one that I did was in July of last year, and I'm doing this episode because it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it was really cool because I listened to the episode that I did in July, and it's wild to think about how much my life has changed. It was right before I went to Critical, which is a big burning event out in Seattle or in Washington in the Pacific Northwest, and then I went to Burning Man. I went to Base Canyon again. I went to Berlin. I've done a bunch of work. I've celebrated Christmas with my family, and it's been 7-8 months, whatever it is, since July. And it's wild to think about how much life can change in that period of time. I just celebrated my 36th birthday, and I've been really committed to creating more content where I am actually out here talking, because it's really, really easy for me to sit back and ask questions and be the one interviewing, be the curious person. And it's very vulnerable and scary for me to want to share with others whatever's going on in my mind. And for those of you tuning into this episode, which is probably almost anybody who's watching this episode, this is a podcast about my podcasting journey. I was really inspired by Alex Hormozi last year and now to record this because of the idea of documenting the journey, which is how he started his podcast, The Game, and he talks about how he wished that he had done it earlier, that he had started writing things down, recording, documenting in some format. And that is the purpose of this podcast. And if you want to keep watching this show, make sure to hit subscribe, pay attention to my channel, and actually watch the podcast. And if you're really, I guess, enjoying this more so, then it's fine. Leave me a comment, do all those things. But I really hope that you watch the actual episodes that I do. It's really been valuable to learn from what I do with that show, being able to watch myself grow, make mistakes. That's annoying. Turning that off. So one of the things that happened when I went and rewatched that podcast episode from back in July of last year was right before I hit that play button. I heard my inner voice say, "Oh, I bet this is going to be so cringy." And then I paused for a couple of seconds and thought, why do I think that? Why do I think that looking back at who I was, how I was showing up is going to be so cringy? Why is it my first instinct? Because often in reality, that just hasn't been the case. I recently published my first Substack, and in doing so, I recently reviewed a couple of pieces from the book that I'm writing about my journey going to see 54 concerts in a single year. And I published 3 of these excerpts onto Substack, and I was actually really blown away by my own writing. I was impressed. I was tearing up. I was in love with myself and the work that I had done. And I thought that was fascinating because I was really worried. It was like, maybe I've written all this stuff and all of it's bad. And I often really resist looking backwards at the things that I've done, in part because, sometimes it feels like a waste of time. But the other part is I don't like looking at myself. I don't like hearing myself. I've never liked taking pictures. It's always something that's made me feel uncomfortable, that I don't look good in them or the way that I want to. I don't like the sound of my own voice. I'm sure many of you relate to that. And doing a podcast, that can be really challenging. And now with where I'm at, I'm realizing that when I reflect back on things, I actually find a lot of love for myself. The courage that I had in that moment to share something incredibly vulnerable, the way that I laugh at myself, the way that I make a ridiculous joke that maybe only I get or certain friends of mine would get. And it just makes me realize how much growth I've had over the course of my life, because there's been lots of periods of my life where I felt deeply alone. I did not like myself, and I would say I actively hated myself in various portions, at least at my deepest core. There was so much self-hatred and anger and judgment and rage and shame about who I was. And over the last few years, it's been really, really huge for me to step out of that shell, whether that's going into kink spaces, whether that's going to Burning Man and the rave community and all of these places where I've been able to step gradually into being who I am. Even doing this social media thing and podcasting and all of this stuff that I genuinely love. Playing video games. I used to have so much shame over playing fucking video games. And honestly, it makes me love Gen Z people so much because you all just play video games and you do your thing and you're not worried as much, at least from my angle, as it seems about what other people think about you, because everybody does a bunch of different stuff. You don't have those same weird categories we did when I was a millennial going through high school where like somebody's a nerd, somebody's a geek, somebody's a whatever. It's even worse in the 80s. And I was an oddball because I played football and I was in choir and musicals and plays and theater. Like, you didn't have those things. I often refer to myself as like a dancing football player because that was super weird. And now when I look back and I look at things like High School Musical, which came out when I was a senior in high school or something like that, and that movie, which was to me at that time just like a cheesy Disney movie, was really such a pivotal piece, I think, in our culture because it really did show you that you didn't have to just be one thing. You didn't have to be just an actor or just in a singer or just a basketball player, right? You could be all of these pieces of who you are. That's a lot of what my brand stands for. You know, I'm an actor, I'm a philosopher, I'm a podcaster, I'm an author, I'm a director of sales, I'm a business owner and a sales consultant. I do a lot of different things. And I think one of the myths that we had throughout our life or throughout the last several generations is you have to like really commit to one thing. I think that's like, there's a level of truth to that. There's a level of focus that's required to be really, really good, to be that Michael Jordan or the Kobe Bryant of your world and just kick ass at that, you know, quote, one thing. But art is a little bit different because art, what makes your art isn't that you're the best at moving a brush in a particular way. It's about how you see the world. It's about the fact that you go dabble in music. It's about the fact that you go dabble in that sport. And then when you come back to your canvas with the brush, it changes how you paint. It changes the colors and the textures that you see. It changes the message and the communication that you want to move forward to other people. Because art is a reflection of our life. It's not simply a skill. I would argue that's the difference between simply being someone who's good at drawing and an actual artist, right? An artist is one who can see something and communicate that specifically through the drawing. Now, you got to learn the technical stuff. You got to get good at those things. But it's not just about skill. It's about taste. It's one of my favorite things about Rick Rubin. There's this really, really popular quote where he is being interviewed on CNN and they ask him, what do you do? Or what is it you get paid to do? He's like, he doesn't, sing, he doesn't play guitar, he doesn't do anything really. And he essentially says that he gets paid for the confidence that he has in his taste and the ability to communicate. People have found that valuable. And I realized hearing that, I was like, darn it, that's like how I feel in the world. And look, not everyone's going to be a literal Rick Rubin. But I do wonder how much further, with whatever that means, that's a really bad question. Next that, I just wonder what my life would look like had I had that confidence in my taste, that inner voice guiding me, had I had a level of deep trust in that much earlier than where I am today. Though at the same time, just like I was saying, it is because of the things that I have been through, my experiences, my unique perspective in life, that gives me the colorings of this art that I'm creating right now for you. It wouldn't look this way if I hadn't been through all that. if I hadn't had lots of self-doubt, if I hadn't had lots of pain and self-hatred and shame and things that I've had to move through and forgive and battle throughout my life and struggle. I wouldn't be who I am today without all that hard stuff. And I love who I am today. And I hope you love it too. So if this message was meaningful to you, please let me know. I think you're great. Thanks for coming along on this ride and tuning in. And there's going to be much more on the way. So hit that subscribe button, share a comment, hit like, do whatever you do here on YouTube. And we'll talk again soon. Ciao.